All right, so let's talk about hands. Hands are awesome. They're super fun. And they're super important. Hands are pretty key in expressing what your character is thinking. We use our hands all the time when we're talking or doing anything really without even thinking about it. They're pretty essential in communicating. You know, there's some statistic that like 50 to 60% of all communication is nonverbal. And a lot of that we're doing with our hands, right? Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about rhythm and body language. And again, going back to what, just how much we use our hands to communicate in any given situation or conversation, and to actually think musically. When you watch your shot, every shot has a rhythm to it, and you don't want that beat to feel boring like a metronome. You want it to feel you want it to reveal something about their personality and what's happening, right? So I actually want to watch a clip real quick. Just scene in The Incredibles. So I want to look at a few different things here. One, both how they're posing the hands and being very meticulous about silhouettes and line of action, but also looking at kind of the rhythm of the conversation and how they use their hands to add accents and to accentuate a point they're making, and also just kind of what their hands reveal about their state of mind in each given shot. So even in this quick section here, like, he obviously feels super casual as he's coming in. He's like licking his fingers. He's super, relaxed. Just like brushing his jacket. And then he snaps into this very, stiff ninja, outstretched ninja pose. It's a nice sharp contrast.
I said I'd be back later.
I assumed you'd be back.
And even looking at, how he rests his hand on his chest here, get this nice separation where he's grouping these three fingers and just separating the index finger just a little bit, and how much of a difference that makes in just making this a more appealing pose, rather than having them just be, stuck together like that.
If you came back at all, you'd be back later.
Well, I'm back, okay?
And then I love in this section where just the animator being very mindful of where the viewer's attention is, and kind of when they choose to have Helen's hand go, she just puts her hand on his shoulder and then zeroes in on the bit of rubble on his jacket right here. It's going from this pose to this pose, and we instantly register this because they have this very clean pose where you have a very smooth, line of action coming up from the wrist and through the fingers. But you can very clearly make out the thumb and the silhouette of the index finger. So this is a very recognizable pose, right? And we instantly see that and say, oh yeah, she's picking up a crumb. But even up here, even though this is kind of out of focus, we still make out her pinky here, and we still make out a little bit of a distinction between her middle finger and her ring finger, right? It's very quick, but very clear. Yeah, same thing here. Like they're very mindful of, keeping a clear silhouette on each of these fingers.
Is this rubble?
Oh.
Even looking at a pose like this, if we zoom in here, I don't know how well you guys can see this with the resolution, but so obviously you got the clear thumb and pointer finger, and you can, this little bit of rubble that is very small, but still clearly silhouetted. And with this finger, with the middle finger, they are very mindful to where you see each of the three sections of the finger. Like you see this little bit here, and you see this little bit here, and you see this bit here. Like they're very clearly defined, right?
It was just a little workout. Just stay loose.
You know how I feel about that, Bob. Darn you, we can't blow cover again.
The building was coming down anyway.
What? You knocked down a building?
It was on...
Sorry.
A building?
It was on fire, structurally unsound. It was coming down anyway.
Tell me you haven't been listening to the police scanner again.
I like here that you see a little bit of an accent
It was on fire.
on fire. When he says, it was on fire, you see, watch his screen left hand. You see a nice subtle spreading of the fingers on the word fire. It was on fire, right? It's not much, but he's just accentuating that word with his hands. And then
It was on fire, structurally unsound. It was coming down anyway.
and you gotta be careful when you're doing this, because you don't want to overdo it with sort of accentuating every beat of a conversation, because then your hands are just going to keep, moving all over the place. It won't feel natural. But they're kind of picking and choosing like which beats of the conversation that Bob accentuates with his hands. So he's like, so if we watch kind of the rhythm of this as he's talking.
It was on fire, structurally unsound. It was coming down anyway.
Tell me you have
Right. It was on fire, structurally unsound. It was coming down anyway. And then it's kind of nice that his hand kind of comes down right by the cut.
Fire, structurally unsound. It was coming down anyway.
Tell me you haven't been listening to the police scanner again.
Look, I performed a public service. You act like that's a bad thing.
It is a bad thing, Bob.
Right.
That's the scanner.
Performed. He's accentuating performed.
Performed a public service. You act like that's
And then you act, and then that's it.
a bad thing.
It is a bad thing, Bob. Uprooting our
Right. They're not overdoing it, but they're just picking and choosing one or two places in each line to just give it that little extra oomph with the hands and the fingers.
our family again, so you can relive the glory days is a very bad thing.
Reliving the glory days is better than acting like they didn't happen.
Yes, they happened. But this, our family, is what's happening now, Bob. And you are missing this. I can't believe you don't want to go to your own son's graduation.
It's not a graduation. He is moving from the 4th grade to the 5th grade.
It's a ceremony.
So watching this section here,
Graduation.
It's not a graduation. He is moving.
and so kind of watching here how not moving the entire pose all together all at once, and trying to figure out places to create overlapping motion where either you're leading with the hands or maybe you're leading with the head. His hands kind of come first, and then the shoulders, and then the head, and then they kind of fall into sync here. And then even very, like, if you look at it on kind of a more micro scale, you watch the screen left hand starts moving first, like right here. And then the screen right hand and the head start moving, and then the rest of the body starts moving. So it's just over the course of like 3-4 frames. When you're watching it, through it, you don't, it's something you feel more than you notice. But even on a movement as quick as that, they're still offsetting all the motion here. And just think about how important those hands are, and kind of getting across Bob's very sarcastic, cynical, like, from the 4th grade to the 5th grade. And then here, this is the other thing we're talking about is, applying pressure. This is a very, very subtle example of, but watch as his fingers kind of come up and hit his forehead. See how they start kind of perfectly straight. Get this very straight line. And then when it makes contact with his forehead, you see this little bit of a bend to suggest pressure. And then straightens back out when it comes off. You can see his index finger keeps moving just a tiny bit back there. Like that bit of kind of a sweep he's doing with the fingers here. It starts down here. Then kind of flourishes up this way. So yeah, fingers are really tricky. They can kind of be a bottomless pit of work. Some animators get really obsessed with them, but it is something that really makes student work stand apart